Hi.
Who's on TV?
Dada. Oh, is that Jaden? That Jaden? Hi, Susan.
Hi. Wee. Okay. We're gonna go night night.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
How are you?
Very good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
How's the day?
Busy.
Yeah.
Lots of work, and then just had an hour and a half about grade 12s going to university, and then I had a quick bite to eat, and then back in my chair again. Too much sitting around today.
Yeah, the nature of everything we do now.
I know. I was laughing with one of my colleagues who has set up his office in his basement, and he's like, so he said, I crushed my stairs goal for the day, because he's always running up and down. He said,
Yeah.
but my steps are rubbish, but he said, I do crush my flights of stairs.
Right. Well, that counts. That every one step is a step. So.
Exactly.
And it's a harder step because he's got to go up, right?
Exactly. But it just seems to, I don't know, people are talking about, I guess it's my busy time at work, but I just seem to have almost less time than pre-COVID. I'm not sure. Not sure what's going on.
I got less time for sure.
I've got 3 teenagers full-time in the house, and
yeah,
I'm sure that makes a difference.
Definitely, big time. Yeah, saying, Mom, what can I eat? What can I eat?
I know. Well, actually, they're pretty good at just feeding themselves, but and I've got them cooking dinner once a night, once each. So I've got 4 nights a week I don't have to cook, which is good.
Oh, beautiful.
Except they don't cook what I eat. But
all right. No trained chefs in the house yet, eh?
No.
All right. Looks like you and me.
You still want to do it? You still want to do it if it's just me?
Oh, yeah, of course, absolutely. And then, so I broadcast it live as well. So it doesn't go through Zoom for whatever reason. It did the very first time I did it, and now it doesn't. So now I have my phone up. And so my first one earlier in the day, I broadcast and stream it through the Facebook business group, like the Vancouver Fit Body Bootcamp group. And then this one that I do, I stream through Instagram. So just to, get some extra stuff out there and, get some exposure in that way. So even if there's not much happening here, at least I can just still teach and there, hopefully some people still get some benefit out of it too. So.
I'll get this is my little gold book where I put all your words.
Fancy notes.
At least I know where to find it.
Yeah, totally. Except I don't know how many notes you can fit in there though too. So that's a different story. All right, I am just going to mute you for the time being, but feel free to unmute whenever you want. And then it just may take a few seconds to get set up on Instagram here once I hit record. All righty, welcome everybody. It is our weekly nutrition teaching here, and we're at the 8 p.m. session right now. And so today we got focusing a little bit more on the nutrition aspect. We've been talking about emotional eating. We've been talking about kind of emotions and things that feelings that we've connected to food prior, and how that has created shame and guilt and things like that with respect to food. We talked about COVID-19 and all different viruses, what are viruses, how they work. Today, we're going to be talking about hyper-palatable foods and how they affect us, and in terms of what we're eating, how we eat, how much we eat, and then also what we need to be aware of in terms of the other aspects of how we can counteract some of these hyper-palatable foods on there. So with that said, kind of the average person right now, just in the way that our life is, especially when we're in quarantine now, the average person is really kind of eating about 16 hours a day, from literally the minute they wake up to the right before they go to sleep. They are either consuming or they are metabolizing food. And so with that, that's essentially, they may not be eating that whole time, but oopsies, I flipped my camera around to look at the wall. There we go. I essentially, yeah. So from the time that they're eating, they're either eating or they're metabolizing food, and there's no real break in there. And a big issue that kind of comes is 60% of people's diets today come from processed food. And there's kind of another level of that. There's processed food, and then there's like ultra processed food, which is the things that will typically be categorized as hyper-palatable. And hyper-palatable are the things like the highest sugar, the high fat foods. And when we intake those, our brain goes crazy and produces massive amounts of dopamine and other of those feel-good hormones. And that's why when we have that, say that piece of cake or that cookie or whatever that thing is for you, that sends all these feel-good signals in the body. Now, while that may be good in the moment, it doesn't necessarily serve us in the long run. And so hyperpalatable foods have actually been defined as foods that are driving the obesity epidemic. And the hard part is that basically majority of all ultra processed foods are hyperpalatable. And the problem with that is that they cause you to overeat. And so there's a study that came out of the National Institute of Health, and they found that when you have a diet that is based primarily around processed foods, it becomes exponentially more difficult to control your hunger. And people with the majority of the food intake coming from processed foods ended up consuming on average 500 calories in excess of what their maintenance level was for the day. And so every single day they were on average 500 calories over what their body needed to just maintain where they were at. And so obviously that turns into weight gain. And so conversely, then they also had the other group, when you base your diet on whole unprocessed foods, they've actually found that their hunger self-regulated, and that you'll actually become or go into a caloric deficit almost effortlessly just for the fact of focusing more on the whole unprocessed foods. And so this study that they were doing, they had these two groups of people, and they literally just told these participants to just eat until satisfied. So eat until satiety. And so whenever you've had enough food, just stop eating. And again, that group that had the processed food, they ended up having an average of over 500 calories per day extra. And so that is just something to be aware of, is that if the majority of our diets are being created and set up of processed foods, like 60%, the average person, how much is in our own personal diet? And how much are we taking in on a regular basis? And how much of that other side is actually the whole unprocessed food? So now the other aspect then is that comes into play here is digestion. And so processed food versus whole food when it comes to digestion. Because yes, I'm not preaching, I'm preaching to the choir here of people listening that like we all know whole unprocessed foods are the ones we're supposed to be eating. Like, and that's nothing new. But what are some of the reasons behind that? And that's why I want to kind of be here tonight. And so digestion. Number one, what is it? It's the process of breaking down, assimilating your food, absorbing the nutrients from those foods. How you digest foods dictates to a large degree the amount of energy that you're actually absorbing from them. And so this was really cool as I was kind of doing some reading and learning about this myself. When you're eating ultra processed foods, and the basics of thinking about that might be chips or ice cream, commercially processed breads or snacks or sweets or the Danish or all those types of foods. You can basically be certain that you're absorbing 100% of the calories that you consume. When you're actually eating whole foods, there's actually a significant amount of portion of the calories that you take in that are actually not even being absorbed and are just passing through you. And so there's a recent study by the USDA, and they looked at whole nuts, and they found that almost 30% of the calories that we know these whole nuts to contain actually went undigested in the digestive tract. And so essentially, this is where it gets really pretty. They looked at the residual calories in the stool of these test subjects, and they found that a significant amount of these calories actually went totally undigested through the GI tract. And so, but then when they took these people and they actually had them go on to something like nut butter. And so, okay, we had our whole nut, we about 30% of the calories passed through the body. Then they took something like nut butter, so the exact same thing, just crushed up and turned into a butter form, is that is essentially doing the pre-digestive processes that now our body doesn't have to do. So as a result, it's been basically pre-digested. And so now that actually resulted in virtually 100% of the calories from that food being absorbed rather than just about 70% of the whole nuts themselves. And so just being aware of what's sticking to whole foods rather than the pre-processed in some way, shape, or form. Because we look at nuts. I mean, I look at nuts as a very great source of fat, a very healthy source of fat. But being aware, if we are, especially if we're on a goal of and a journey of weight loss, that we might want to look, okay, how can I make the foods that I am bringing, even if they are processed, how can I make them maybe a little bit less processed? Or how can I make some better choices that will be a little bit less processed so I don't have that full 100% absorption of all the calories that I'm taking in, yet at the same time, still feel totally satisfied and feel not restricted. Like when we're to lose weight, we have to be calorically restricted or I don't want to say calorically restricted, that's the wrong words. Calorically reduced. And that's just science-based. We know that. But there's a way to do it. It's just that diet culture has basically told us that we need to be hungry and that we need to be in a real sense of restriction. And that's not the case. We don't have to do that. We've had so many people on our previous transformation challenges that are saying, I cannot eat the amount of food that you are prescribing to me. And that's a massive, massive paradigm shift for them because they're not used to that. And they're used to feeling hungry when going on a diet. And yet these people are super, super full, and yet they're still getting results on losing weight. And that's the best part. That's the way that it should be it should be a comfortable process and an enjoyable process as we're trying to do that. So touching another aspect, when it comes to digestion, there is the thermic effect of food. So if you've heard of that, that's essentially certain foods have a higher thermic effect in the body, meaning that essentially certain foods cause your body to have to work harder to break them down. And so when your body works harder, then it burns more calories. And other foods take less energy for us to break down into its simple parts to be able to absorb, and therefore it doesn't use up as much energy in our body and are really simple and easy. And so all that's happening without you doing anything other than putting it in your mouth, chewing it a few times, and swallowing. And the thermic effect kind of takes over at that point. So what constitutes high thermic, low thermic effect? Well, high protein and whole unprocessed protein will essentially have your highest thermic effect in your body. And the lowest thermic effect foods, well, guess what I started talking with at the beginning of this, processed foods. Processed foods are going to have the lowest thermic effect in your body. So you're not going to burn very much or use very much energy to be able to break down the food that you put in if it is processed. Whole foods will burn about twice the number of calories just through digestion alone. Nothing else, just digestion alone compared to those ultra-processed foods. The other thing is that the majority of ultra-processed foods are primarily constituted of carbohydrates, of fats, and then that creates that like ultra-palatable sensory experience in your brain that just gets all the sensors going off in high gear. And it's like when you combine sugar and fat, your brain, it's like the celebration of lights, fireworks are just going off like crazy. Like they're loving it. But again, that may be amazing in that moment for you, but is that the long-term feeling that you're going to have? And 99% of the time it's not. And we're going to feel low energy afterwards. We're going to maybe have gas, bloating, cramping because of the digestion. That food didn't sit well with us. Our mental energy, our mental clarity may not be as strong. We don't have the energy to be present with our family or our work to be able to do that. And being aware of these things and how they are affecting us. And so here's another cool fact for you on the thermic effect. As you may know, a lot of foods, or the macronutrients, carbs, fats, and proteins, 1 gram of each of those contains a certain number of calories. Fat contains 9 calories per gram, whereas protein and carbs contain 4 calories per gram. With the thermic effect, if you take a high quality unprocessed form of protein, if you incorporate the thermic effect of that actually works out to about 3 calories per gram of protein rather than 4 calories. And if you end up having 100 grams, that could be, the difference of 100 calories there very, very easily. Combine that over the course of every day for a week, you got 700 calories there that all of a sudden just added up out of nowhere, just for the fact of choosing a higher quality protein source. And that just allowed you to go into your caloric reduction if you're trying to lose weight significantly easier. So, and this kind of leads me to the next aspect of prioritizing and ensuring that you are getting enough protein. You're actually gaining a metabolic advantage by doing that. If you eat meat, obviously it's going to be significantly easier to be able to do that. And if you're a vegetarian, vegan, it's definitely going to be harder to do that, to be able to increase that protein intake without increasing a whole bunch of carbohydrates to go with it. Because as we know, virtually every single source of protein for a vegetarian incorporates carbohydrates. So there is ways to be able to increase our protein intake as a vegetarian and not have a substantial increase in our carbohydrates, but it does require planning in advance, and it is something that we have to take a little bit more concentration and a little bit more effort and focus to a higher degree until we figure out what that routine is and what the foods are to incorporate on a regular basis, to find that, because you can absolutely do a higher protein, lower carb on a vegetarian diet. It's just a matter of finding out how to make that happen for you, but it is possible. Obviously, it's just if you incorporate meat, that's going to be significantly easier. Here's the other thing about protein, both vegetarian and meat. It is by far the most satisfying macronutrient, meaning that's going to keep you fuller and for longer compared to carbs and fats. And so if we're wanting to be wanting to lose weight, and we know that we have to be in a caloric deficit to be able to lose weight, if we increase the amount of protein that we have, we're going to be in a significantly better day-to-day spirit and energy if we have a higher protein intake, because that's going to keep us more satisfied. It's going to help us feel more full and feel more full for longer, so that if we are in a caloric restriction and we're in a caloric deficit, that we're not going to be angry every single day at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon when we're just like waiting for dinner and we can't wait to get there. And this is what I said, it's the exact same as what I said before, is that if you go into a caloric deficit, if you go through it the right way, you can absolutely be 100% satisfied the whole way through and not be hungry. Now, hunger is not a bad thing. And I think hunger is actually a good thing in certain respects, and implemented the right way if you're tracking things properly. But at the same time, majority of people think that to lose weight, you have to be hungry like a lot. And then that leads to our mood being crappy. No one else want to be around us, or our coworkers not want to be around us or ask us questions or bring things up. And so we can absolutely 100% be totally satisfied and lose weight at the same time if that is our goal, that we don't have to have a big kind of restriction type of sense. So protein will increase the thermic effect, has a much greater thermic effect than carbs and fat. And at the same time, it has a much greater effect in terms of our satiety that it holds us. So it's like a 1-2 punch combo by getting that. Now, I want to obviously touch on the other side here, because I want to kind of, because other people will say that, okay, we're eating too much meat, we're eating too much protein, things like that. And so here's the thing. I agree with that to a certain extent. And the big area, though, that I want to emphasize that I believe that we're eating way too much protein is in the area of processed as well as highly commercially raised meats. So we're eating far too much proteins from our fast food joints. The burgers, the fried chicken, the frozen dinners, the pre-prepared meats in the freezer section, deli meats. All these types of foods are filled, number one, with a whole bunch of junk. They're added with other sauces or things like that to be able to make it, again, higher sugar, higher fat, to get those hormones just going like crazy in the brain, the dopamine hits, so that you make it more hyper-palatable, so then you eat more of it. And so being aware of that. And then number two, the highly commercialized raised meats, they're pumped full of antibiotics, plus steroids, and all the things that you don't want in your body. And so much of that then ends up wreaking havoc on your hormonal system, because they're endocrine disruptors. Endocrine system is basically your hormone system. And when it comes down to it, I do want to say this, like I've talked about, we have to be in a caloric deficit to be able to lose weight, yes, but that being in a caloric restriction is not the only thing. Weight loss is a hormonal game. If your hormones are out of balance, you will not lose weight. And one way to really balance those hormones is proper nutrition and exercise and sleep, reducing stress. Those are all really, really strong pillars that we need to be aware of. It's not just about caloric restriction. If you reduce your calories, but you're super high stress and you're not sleeping well, I guarantee you're not going to be getting very good results. Plain and simple. And in this time where we are in quarantine, we're still worried about COVID-19. We're still worried about if we're going to sick. We're worried about getting our grandparents sick. Like, stress is high. We've lost jobs. We've lost businesses. We don't know if we're going to be able to open. Like, all these things are up. And if we don't implement things to reduce stress, we will continue to have stress high. We'll continue to gain weight, because we will increase more cortisol. We'll create more stress hormones in the body. And then that just leads to more and more weight gain. And so it's super, super important for us to be aware of the things that we're experiencing right now in our day-to-day life, and how we are managing and mitigating these levels from continuing to increase. So with all that said, coming back into protein, basic recommendations at the absolute lowest is starting at 0.36 grams of protein per pound of body weight. But before those that know anything about this, this recommendation is really just like the minimum to like prevent protein deficiency, but to be able to optimize your health and to be able to optimize body composition, you absolutely need more than that. Anywhere from typically 0.7 grams per pound to like 1.1, maybe if you train heavily, 1.2 grams per pound of body weight is kind of what we want to look at in terms of getting that protein intake each day. Now, to talk to the people who are saying that we're eating too much protein in terms of what our body can handle, we've heard things that have said that too much protein, high intake is bad for the kidneys. We used to have some research and some people that talked about that. Recent research has come out and has completely disproven that a high protein intake has any negative effect on the kidneys at all, unless there is a predisposed or pre-existing kidney condition like kidney disease or something where the kidneys are not functioning. But normal functioning kidneys, no issues whatsoever. Research has proven a high protein diet does not have any effect on the protein function there, or the function of the kidneys at that point. It used to also kind of be floating around that high protein would create a higher acidic environment in the body. And then that would cause a greater excretion of calcium from the bones and then lead to earlier onset of osteoporosis. That has also now been disproven through multiple research studies. Basically, they found there was a very short-term decrease in calcium, but nothing that would create anything else. Long-term, no changes. And so that has then been disproven in terms of that. And so just being aware that, again, whether you do meat or whether you do vegetarian, vegan, it's how can we increase our own versions of protein to help us feel more satisfied, to keep us fuller for longer, and then to also have a higher thermic effect in our body. And if we increase that protein intake on a regular basis, daily basis, we will be in a better position for, number one, not having to eat as often because we're going to be more full, we're going to be more satisfied, but we're also going to be getting more of the body composition results that we were hoping to get for, again, most people, that's going to be the focus for weight loss that I'm talking about here. Obviously, if we're looking to gain muscle, we still need that protein intake there as well, but it is just something to be aware of. So again, this whole talk was not about protein. We started talking about hyper-palatable foods, how they affect us, just a brief foundation in terms of the basics of how they affect us, how they cause us to eat more, to eat faster. And the other aspect too is these highly processed foods, like think about a highly processed food, how fast you can eat that. So you can go get like a fast food combo meal or something like that. You can down that and you don't even necessarily know that you're full by the time you're finished it. And we've all been there. Or that we've just eaten something so fast, we're like, oh, I'm still kind of hungry, but I just had a big plate of food. And you ate it in less than 10 minutes. And you're like, well, no wonder you're still hungry because your brain hasn't had, or your gut hasn't had a chance for the signals to come up to the brain to tell you, you know what, you had enough food. And so this is one of the other really awesome things is that, yeah, that research study that I talked about at the beginning where the people who based majority of their diet on processed foods ended up eating 500 calories more per day than what their maintenance level required. Part of that I can probably bet is just for the fact that they ate faster and so that they had more time to eat more before they figured out that they were actually full. Whole unprocessed foods, you cannot eat that fast. Like try chewing an apple as fast as you can take down applesauce. Like it's just not going to happen. Try taking everything that you would put into a smoothie and eat that separately as compared to drinking a smoothie. There's not a chance you could put that down as fast as what you do is in a smoothie. And so it's being aware that even a smoothie, even like I literally have a smoothie every single day. So I'm not down in smoothies, and I'm helping just people to just think about these simple things that we do in our life is that the smoothie is you're putting that smoothie, you're taking all those ingredients that you put in and you're breaking them down and you're basically doing the pre-digestive process. So your body no longer has to do that. And so being aware of the ingredients that you put into your smoothies, for example, because if you, and this is smoothies can go wrong super, super easy in terms of super high carbs, super high sugar with what people put into it. They can put a cup and a half of berries or fruit or bananas or things like that in, no problem. And all of a sudden you got 50 grams of sugar in there and it's like you're down in it in 10, 15 minutes or less. And you're wondering why that isn't working for you. And so making sure that, for example, if we are going to have those smoothies, that we are not loaded up with a ton of fruit, that we do have our higher fat in there, we do have our protein in there to be able to slow the absorption of the sugar from the fruits that is in there. And so looking at the ways that even if we do process our food a little bit, that we can find ways to slow down the digestive process a little bit, and just being aware of that. And that's all it is. And just, again, as much as we can, like 60% of our diet on average is processed foods now. And so what are we doing can we lower that number in our own lives, in our own daily life? Can we start to bring in more of those unprocessed foods so that we are bringing in the foods that are going to, again, fill us up, give us the vitamins and minerals that our body needs to function well, to give us the energy and all of that we need, but then to also feel totally satisfied. Because I can guarantee you, if you can easily get a fast food combo meal with a burger and fries and a drink, that's going to be 2,000 calories. Easily. Let's just make it 1,500 to make it more normal. When you do that, that's one meal. You eat that in a 15-minute time period. You're hungry, I guarantee, in 2 hours. Yet you still have your entire day to go. Yet if you took 1,500 calories and you do it the right way, you can have your entire day's worth of food on 1,500 calories or 2,000 calories. Easy, 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 if you make the right choices. And that's the thing, like, we can feed and serve ourselves so well and so easily on lower caloric foods because they're nutrient dense and they're giving us what our body needs to be able to function optimally. That's why the people where it said on that study, if they had more whole unprocessed foods, they naturally didn't eat as much, and they were naturally in more of a caloric deficit just for the fact of staying whole unprocessed foods. And let's take the hyper-palatable component another step further. And we've all experienced this one super easily. Take a baked potato. If you put nothing on that baked potato, and it was like, say it was like a russet potato, like one of those big ones, how much of that would you actually eat with absolutely nothing on it? Like, for me personally, I'd probably get through a quarter of it and I'd be like, this is dry. Like, where is something that goes on with the potato? Now, take some butter, take some nice, beautiful grass-fed butter on there, throw some nice Himalayan pink salt on there, crush up. I can eat down that whole potato, no problem. That is creating a hyper-palatable food. That's exactly what we've done there. And so it's funny too, the more and more that and now I'm not saying that I eat a baked potato by itself, but I'm just using that to illustrate a point, that the more whole food that we go with, the more unprocessed that we go with, the less chance that there is that we are going to dive in and fully overeat. And there's beautiful things like spices and seasonings that we can do that will create so much flavor if we learn it. We have to be willing to experiment and take some time in the kitchen over time to be able to do that, to get those beautiful flavors to come out, rather than just resorting only to butter or to oils and things like that. Now, I have nothing against fats like that. Fats are amazing. Again, it's just coming from, are they the right source? And are you choosing the right ones for the right type of cooking that you're doing? Like, if you're doing high temperature cooking, stay away from coconut oil and vegetable oils in general. Like, get rid of that. Those have all been proven to be heart disease, like everything you don't want. Those are precursors and contributing to that. If you're doing high temperature cooking, do not use olive oil. It will go rancid as soon as you get above medium temperature. It's got a very low smoke point. And once you hit that smoke point, all the nutritional benefits of that are toast. And you're actually going to have more deleterious effects in your body as a result of that. High temperature cooking is avocado oil, it's coconut oil, going with something like that for those high temperature cooking, because it will stay stable at that high temperature. And you get the beautiful benefits of the high fat, and then obviously the taste that comes with it as well. I'm going on different tangents down here too. But again, of just being aware. Are the majority of foods I'm taking in processed, hyper-palatable, causing me to eat more, to not be satisfied? Or am I moving more of my nutrition towards whole foods, unprocessed foods, things that are going to keep me satisfied, give me the nutrients I need to function optimally, and have the energy that I want, and yet feel great, and yet at the same time, lead me towards the body composition results that I'm also hoping for as well. That's it. That is my teaching for tonight. So if anybody has any questions, by all means. I definitely have a challenge to myself. I was at like 45 minutes to an hour on like my first 3 to 4 of these that I did. And I said, I'm not doing that. I got to respect your time more. And so we're keeping it under a half hour is the goal every time. Thank you for the comments there, Sam. Appreciate it, sir. Sam also says, yes, food quality is important. The more crap you eat, the more you crap. And we got to save that toilet paper right now. So I can always count on Sam to keep it clean.
Super quick question. If you cook your veggies, so a smoothie, you know, you've done that first digestive process. If you're cooking your vegetables, I guess you're making it easier to digest as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, like, and it also depends on the food. There's actually some foods that you actually get better more nutrients out of it by cooking it a little bit. So tomatoes, for example, if you actually cook them a little bit, you'll actually get more nutrition out of a slightly cooked tomato than you will raw tomato.
Okay, interesting.
So yeah, and part of it too, like I know a friend of mine, he literally cannot, like he's allergic to raw vegetables. Cook a vegetable, totally fine.
Wow.
And so if people really want to dive like deeper into this, there's a really amazing book called The Plant Paradox of essentially this doctor, he's taken thousands of patients and he's put people on this protocol. But basically he's taken and turning a lot of things that we've heard on its head in the sense of foods that we've been told are super healthy for us are actually creating a lot of autoimmune dysfunctions in our body, because essentially every plant that grows, it wants to survive. Everything in the world that grows wants to survive. So it has its own natural defense mechanisms and enzymes that it produces to try and prevent like bugs or other things like that from eating it. And so by cooking it, you help to destroy some of those defense mechanisms, and then it makes it easier to digest. And for example, like I think a couple of the things that he says, quinoa, it's been such a long time since I've read that. Quinoa and like kale, for example, two things that have been treated as super, super healthy. He's like against that for a lot of people because a lot of people cannot handle it because of the enzymes that are the defense mechanisms, enzymes in that plant food that can wreak havoc on your insides that you just may not necessarily know, where it's causing inflammation in you that may be leading to other things. So, I mean, this is the problem with the nutrition industry as well. Like, kale's amazing. Kale sucks. Quinoa is awesome. No, it's not. Like, you literally have, for anything that's healthy, you have people saying that's not. And for anything that's not healthy, you have people saying the opposite. And then you have people that are like the if it fits your macros approach, which is eat anything you want if it fits your macros. Down a bowl of ice cream if it fits within your macros. But how is that actually healthy for you? You might still actually, because of the science behind it, be able to get results you want. But I guarantee you, you're not going to be feeling as good as you want, and your insides are not going to be optimal in the sense of functioning the way that you would want them to or that they want to. So it's like, I'm not a proponent of the if it fits your macros approach. I think it can work. But I think there's other things that you have to apply within that approach to be able to do it the right way and to do it the healthy way, where it's like, I'm not just going for a short-term goal. I actually want long-term health out of this. That's something that's going to benefit me, rather than doing the yo-yo approach of up and down, and being like, in my orientation, we're just about to start a 6-week challenge now. One of the things I'm sharing in the orientation is like, so many people have completed a diet. That already sounds wrong. They've completed it. They finished it. Why did they finish it? So like that's the big issue, is like we've done a whole bunch of diets. We finished a whole bunch of diets. What are we doing now? We're going back to the exact same position where we feel like we need to go on a diet again. That's the whole problem in the first place. But the hardest part is we're going for convenience. We're going for the aspects that like hyper-palatable foods and convenience foods are just so easy in our life right now. And so why would we go the whole food, unprocessed food? Like our society is not set up for us to make it easy to do the whole food approach, because that takes more effort on our part to be able to do, when I can just take something out of freezer, put it in the microwave, and away I go. But that's the whole, this is exactly what I talked about in the virus video teaching that I did. The whole thing, that this whole thing is a pandemic, is because our health sucks as a world society. Because we're doing the wrong things. We're looking for convenience. We're putting the wrong foods into our body. If we actually started at the core and actually made ourselves healthier on the whole as a society, this would not be a pandemic like it is. Plain and simple. 99% of all the deaths in Italy, study came out, and I shared this on the last talk, 99% of all the deaths in Italy from COVID-19 every single one of those 99% of people had a pre-existing chronic illness. 25% of them had one, 26% of them had two chronic illnesses, 49% of them had three, were suffering from three chronic illnesses or more. Less than 1% or less than 2% of people that actually died from COVID-19 did not have any pre-existing conditions. So all these deaths are in a way preventable, or at least preventable to a significantly larger degree than what's happening right now. But we're looking at it, oh, it's this virus. Viruses have been around forever. And the flu season kills thousands of people every single year. This is nothing different. This is just bigger, right? I'm not taking anything away from it. But if we were healthier as a society, then it wouldn't be what it is. That's my rant.
That's a great rant. Thank you so much. That was really, really useful.
Good. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for joining.
Okay. Have a great night.
All right. You too, Sue.
Okay, bye.
Bye.